This is episode 92 of our Road to Unicum, and today we review the Tier 8 Swedish medium, the UDES 14.5, and I've got to thank you guys. I wasn't actually going to be playing this line, I was going to pick up the Italian line, but from the comments on my channel, it sounded like there's a lot more interest in the new Swedish mediums, and I'm currently on the Tier 9, and so far I like this line better than I was expecting. It's pretty unusual. In some ways, it's kind of similar to what you think a Stridsvagn tank destroyer might have been if it were given a turret. You know, it's still got the low profile and the very angled frontal hull armor and the kind of pancake turret. There's a few things that are notable about the tank. So first of all, the gun has an unusually good alpha value of 360, which is really nice. And then the APCR, which is the silver ammo, has an amazing shell velocity of 1385. Now, a couple things, like a lot of Tier 8 mediums, this isn't a particularly fast tank, and also, you know, even though it's got sloped armor, the lower hull is totally penetratable, especially if your opponents aim in. So this isn't really a good tank. I haven't found it to be too good getting close to opponents. This battle and the next battle that I'm going to show in this video are both of Tier 10 battles, so I was really kind of not desiring to get too close in the brawling range. Now, people have, you know, had success going to C1 and then, you know, playing the ridge game. What's really interesting about these tanks is that they have this hydraulic suspension where if you're going, I think it's below 20 kilometers an hour, you're able, if you're aiming down, the hydraulic suspension will boost your tank so that you can aim lower and you can have an effective gun depression of minus 13 degrees. Now, that sounds really nice in practice. It's not immediate gun depression. And so I found in brawling situations it can be very limited unless you're in an ideal situation like over by C1 where you can brawl just over a ridge and then pull back immediately. You might be wondering why I'm not going into the ditch to save the T49, and the short answer is simply that that person has put himself in a situation where he's facing against 3 tanks, and if I go down there, I'm just going to get killed too. This tank has a fairly long reload time, which means that it can be good for peek-a-boom play, but it doesn't have the sustained damage to burn down other targets, right? And I think this is part of the hard thing, you know, to make a judgment call. If a friendly player is at risk of dying, but I can meaningfully help him, and there's a good chance that both of us will survive, then I'll go ahead and do it. But the problem with our T49, and same with our Wizzy 132A, they're both in positions where they're going to leave themselves very vulnerable to opposing fire. Now, when I came originally to this area, the G2 corner, which is directly behind me about 50-60 meters, is actually a really strong sniping position. The problem is that, you know, several of their tanks went into the trench early, and because of this I needed to move forward so I'd be able to shoot down into the trench. Now the problem with this, our Wizzy 132, he's been spotted. He stayed there too long once the T44-100 was starting to get close, and now he's kind of doubling down on his mistake by like driving into the ditch, and now, you know, he's putting himself against multiple opponents. And, you know, this is the kind of thing, again, you know, if you're in the situation you get out of trouble, run away from the guns. Don't run toward them. And I know that sounds amazingly obvious, but you sit here and you watch what people are doing sometimes, and it's like, oh, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think in a lot of cases what people are doing is they're panicking. They're assuming that they're going to die, and so they just want to try to get one shot in. The best thing you can do, especially when they're friendly arties, in this case we've got 2 arties, is stretch it out. Make them have to come around rocks and such where you'll have the first shot advantage, and where, you know, you're helping to keep them lit as long as possible so your arty can fire on them. Okay, so C1 has sort of been a draw. Neither side wanted. A lot of times if a team wins C1 quickly, they'll gain control of the western side of the map. They can quickly push the 2-3 lanes and then collapse on the area around the spawn. Now the tough thing for the Persian is he, like me, is not the fastest tank in the world, and so, you know, this is like one of those tanks because it doesn't have good bully armor. Like, it's understandable the Persian went where he went to C1, especially after a lot of their tanks had died, because he's got a pretty decent turret. But, you know, I don't really have armor. Now what I'm laying here in ambush is to get this T44-100, and me and the arty both hit him. That's a good thing. Now, where I was behind that tree, that's a super exposed area, right? Now that their arties know that I'm there, and now it looks like their STA-1 has smartly gone up to the C1 area, I go ahead and kind of try to line up the crosshairs there just to take a snapshot. It's a low probability shot, but, you know, usually you're going to finish a battle with plenty of ammo, so you might as well go ahead and take it, especially if it's silver ammo. The cost is generally pretty cheap. Okay, nice. So our camping Tier 8 German heavy and some other tanks have smacked that STA. And remember, I knocked down the trees here, did a little bit of gardening preemptively early in the match, so now we've got this amazing depth of bush cover. And one thing you want to be careful of, if you believe Artie's going to target you, don't sit directly in the bush. For whatever reason, Artie tends to fire right into the middle of the bush. You can sit back behind it like 10, 12 meters, still gain the bush cover, and then be able to spot through it. There is one other thing too. You can turn off the feature. You can see in sniper mode, I still see the intervening kind of plants and grasses and such. It's funny, there was a video that True Voodoo posted recently talking about certain settings, and I've left it on there personally kind of as a realism thing, and maybe I should disable it in sniper mode. I'm sure from just a pure gameplay perspective it would be better for me, but in some ways I kind of like having all the graphics and the immersion. Probably not good if you're trying to maximize your WN8. Now, the great thing about the T49 is going to have the first shot advantage because he drove across the gap. Also, I could tell, even if I hadn't physically seen the T49 earlier, that he was running the derp gun because of the sound, that deep boom when he fired. And so I know there's not going to be any risk of me getting shot at by him when he crosses that gap because he's going to be on reload. Okay, the T44 has gone in pretty deep. Our Arties are in pretty big jeopardy here. Thankfully, they have both rotated away from the T44. The T44 is super beat up, but he did crest the railroad there, so now I've been spotted, and I've got to keep moving. One thing about this tank, which is helpful from range, because it is a flat pancake, it's really easy for opponents to miss their shots on you. And then that frontal hull is so angled and has just enough armor, I think it's 35 millimeters of hull armor, where you're not going to get triple overmatched unless the gun is higher than 105 millimeters in caliber. Now this is kind of a tough thing, so I go ahead and push around behind him, and what's really painful is not the T44-100, but rather his buddy, the SU-130 PM, which is all the way in the back there. And then I was kind of stutter stepping, and thankfully I didn't drive into where that Artie was firing. Kind of a dangerous thing, but as you can tell, I was waiting for my reload, which is a really dangerous thing because this tank's reload is unusually high. The DPM is about middle of the pack, but given that the alpha is high, that's actually a really good thing because, again, your ability to peek-a-boom at times is really important. If you seek hard cover, you can shut down an opponent's DPM, where even if they have the same DPM, if they have a lower alpha and there's hard cover between you, you can out-trade them. And then notice I was sitting in that tiny little bush on the side of this rock here, just waiting because I knew that SU-130 was trying to cut to the east, and so I wanted to take him out. Okay, and then here I spot the Artie. Go ahead. I missed a shot. I should have been, I think I didn't lead that quite enough, and I have gotten spotted, so I'm going to back up behind this rock just to put that between me and the other Artie. And then their SCA is going to peek here. The tough thing for him is that, I have enough silver penetration. It's 217, which is pretty functional, right? The tanks that have below 200 often can struggle in situations, but this, 217 penetration for Tier 8 medium tank is pretty solid, right? Okay, now part of the thing that's a little bit scary is, their IS-7 is pushed down toward our base. He's going to maul the AT-15, so there's really, I'm not going to go back. I mean, really the thing to do in this particular case, if you're looking at the map, is this is the situation where you should cap. Now notice here, the gun depression is really poor, the base of 6 degrees, and I really have to slow down quite a bit in order to get better gun depression. So now what I'm going to tell the team here is, let's go ahead and let's 3-cap it, and then just like in some of the prior episodes, people's cap position is a little bit on the wonky side. You remember I talked about this in Corellia, with the EBR 105, that our Artie who came to cap was sitting on the outside, kind of like our FV is like, why would you do this, right? Where I am, I can proxy spot the T30 if he comes back. Moreover, he has to come all the way around to get to me, whereas he can fire on the FV. It's micro positioning, but there's no reason not to move up against rocks. Again, I think sometimes people just aren't thinking through kind of the fields of fire. But in this case, the T30 doesn't come back in time and we win. We're going to take a look at a second battle. This is going to be a Tier 10 Overlord, and what I'll get a chance to show you here is some second ridge sniping, so not full-on sniping in the back, so close enough where I can spot targets, but far enough away that I'm not overexposed, or if I need to get away, that it'll be easy for me to do so. Right now, if I'm in a brawly medium or upper tier medium, I would consider going over to the E0 area. However, because this is a Tier 10 battle, I don't want to do that because, if I get pushed on by tanks, they're going to bully me and take me out. Now, this hill right here with these bushes, this is a very good kind of a third line of kind of positioning where it's, for example, it's really good for tank destroyers. I think our UDES is going to go up on there. The second ridge right in front of me is kind of where you can go as a secondary position. The most aggressive is up in front of where the LT-432 was. And then notice here, I'm going to go ahead and just take the time and then knock down some of these trees so I've got a wider bush line to work with. And obviously you don't want to do this when someone's looking right at the bushes because they'll blind fire the tree that you just knocked over. But in this case, nothing's been spotted yet. They haven't come around. I've probably got another 10, maybe 15 seconds before someone comes close enough, and they'd have to be watching as well, right? Looking in the direction where the bushes are being knocked over. Okay, now I've basically doubled the size of the bushes, and now I just need to wait a little bit. The 432 is doing the right thing, going up where he is, given that he's a flat pancake, given that he has such ridiculously unhistorical armor, and he's fast, he can afford to do what he's doing, right? And then so what I want to do is hang out here and wait until one of their... I basically have a couple different options in terms of firing. So one is directly in front of me to the south, that's where their progetto is. A little bit to the southwest, so that's where their 268 is pushing. And then if their tanks are in the middle of the map, they can potentially get up on those ridges where I can shoot them. But the main thing is just to be patient here. So I'll go ahead and hit that progetto with a nice shot. And then originally he's coming over the ridge on my side and then decides to think better of it and backs up. So that was actually smart of him. If he'd kept, a lot of players would just by default keep moving forward, but it's very early in the match. I wouldn't suggest doing that. I think his backing up is the smart thing. He just shouldn't have backed up onto the ridge as high as he did while he was still lit. Right? And so, that shot missed. That is one other deficiency of this tank. The base accuracy is 0.38, which is really not very good. Right? I mean, that aiming reticle is still pretty big, and so even if you have time to fully aim in, the shot may sail away from where you want and either miss the target completely or hit an area that is not a weak spot. So, sometimes when people are looking at play like this, and I get accused of this all the time, of, W and 8 powder, blah, blah, blah. There is no smarter position for me to be in. And in some cases, if you're in a really good position, you do have to be patient and wait. Now, what I'm not doing is hanging out so far back that I can't spot. I'm able to self-spot where I am, and this guy is overexposing his tanks and gets punished for it. He should have been at least poking through a bush at the least, given his position. And then this guy here, Tiger 2, is trying to get into the battle, but the thing is, he knows that I'm here. I've been spotted here previously when I fired on the progetto, but from where he was, if he's going to want to get a shot on our guys that are hanging out along the E-ridge, he's going to have to come around the corner. Now this is a little bit of a scary moment here. I actually take a somewhat risky shot on that lynx. I didn't realize he was as close to the 432 as he was. Otherwise, I would have waited until he crossed further to my left before making that shot. And then their progetto rushes the 432, so I take out the progetto. That's the more dangerous tank because if the 432 survives a shot from the 268, because the 268 is non-turreted, he can now do this. And this is part of what's nice about being a pancake tank. I can take those shots where I was lit, probably, but that Rheinmetall Borsig doesn't have much of a shot because of how little I'm showing my tank. He was actually overexposing his tank, and then I'm shooting down on the 268. And this is the funny thing. The 268 is now like, I'm going to shoot that UDES in the back. And the thing is, I'm not going to show myself to him. There's no reason to. Our snipers, even though their 268 is tunnel visioning me, our 432 and our UDES tank destroyer can just work him down. That's why it's really tough. If you're playing a tank destroyer that's turretless and you push in too far, that's exactly what can happen. I don't blame them for doing that and trying to take out the 432. It's just that, the 268, by virtue of not having any gun depression, has to really come all the way up and over the ridge, and a tank like the 432 is really nimble. And you could definitely, I got a low roll there. Remember, my alpha's 360. If I got even a slightly below average roll, I would have finished him off, although you could definitely argue that driving over here on the way, I should have switched over to high explosive and then shot him through the turret. Either way, he's dead. I think he just badly rushed that shot. And I keep forgetting, like, this tank is not like, the Swedish mediums are not like other medium tanks where you've got a fairly high rate of fire. This is, well over 9 seconds. And so, you've got to kind of take your time and be patient. And then you're going to watch me make some really fundamental mistakes here in late game positioning. Obviously, we've got a massive lead. This is pretty much unlosable. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and take a shot on this Jagdtiger because he's showing me his side, and then I'm going to hide back behind the building. Now, the problem with this is that I'm still pretty far away, right? So because of this, I won't have choice shots later in the game. And the Jagdtiger, all he's doing, first of all, okay, the other thing I'm doing here, which is really bad, is I should be side scraping. So my hull, instead of pointing diagonally to the right, should be pointing diagonally to the left, right? So that the Jagdtiger doesn't see anything except for the side of my hull. And then that was, like, again, another risky shot. I go ahead and decide here to... In that case, actually, I'd already burned my repair kit, so I had to wait. It was kind of an anxious moment because I didn't know if it'd out-reload my ability to fire at him. And he's dead now, but there's a couple things, right? So the first thing I could have done is simply reverse side scrape. Simple, corrective fix. The other thing I could have done after that first shot against the Jagdtiger is kept driving to my right. He may have been able to fire one shot at me, but get myself behind the buildings diagonally, the next building over to the right. And had I done so, I would have been close enough where I might have had a shot, have been able to work a shot on the T95. You can see here I'm sniping I'm too far from the action. There's no good shot there. The pen indicator is totally red, and there's nothing that I can do. So it's definitely a fine balance with Swedish mediums of finding the right distance of engagement. You don't want to be too close. You've got superb camo and you want to use it, and really big alpha, but you don't want to be too sniping, too far campy, because otherwise you won't have much stuff to fire at. I am only about 30% of the way to my target of 100 patrons by the end of the year. I will take as many $1 a month patrons as are willing to support me and the content I have on my channel. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your comments and feedback. Take care.